ELD with Brainstorm MTG back, and we have the finals here of the Tuesday night tournament from Gaming Etc. They run a weekly event. Always get a fairly solid turnout, and here it is Storm versus Miracles. Already got by Miracles once today. Let's see if that is possible again in one of the most difficult matchups for Storm. Used up a lot of luck in round one. We'll see what's left in the tank. And it looks like the die roll was won by Miracles here, leading out with Flooded Strand. Got a Rob Alexander signed Strand. Matched by a Rob Alexander signed Polluted Delta. And Ponder being played by Storm. Very important for Storm to be able to set up its later draws, but occasionally that Ponder is actually going to lead to a turn one win. Sometimes all you need is that Lion's Eye Diamond or extra Ritual. Such a difficult deck to play against. You never really know when things could go horribly wrong. And of course, it is one of the more challenging decks to play in the format. I would argue perhaps no one really plays it perfectly. There's often many lines that are kind of similar in strength. It really depends on what your opponent draws. And here we have a counterbalance and a counter spell. Of course, counterbalance, a more pressing problem, but counterspell will need to be dealt with in order to win the game. So let's see where this goes. If the turn is passed and counterbalance lands, this could be a very uphill game. Looks like a Lotus Petal there. So Lotus Petal, Lotus Petal. Perhaps setting up for some discard spells, or maybe just trying to get down before, yeah, just getting down before counterbalance. Very, very interesting. Making sure to have the mana. Of course, counterbalance gonna hit on 1, 0, 2, whatever it is. Very often you need all of those up and down the curve in order to win with Storm. You almost always are, I shouldn't say almost always, certainly more than half the time Infernal Tutor is involved. Oh, and then we have a Duress. So it looks like not playing that counterbalance, leaving the counter spell up, could end up being really a problem here. So counterspell taken, not played, that would have added to Storm. And we see Dark Ritual, so hesitating getting that counterbalance down into Ad Nauseam. So very unlikely turn of events here. Having face down counterspell and counterbalance, we've got an Ad Nauseam which is resolving, and a Storm count of 3 here. So Cabal Ritual, of course, having already played a land, gonna need Lotus Petals. Lion's Eye Diamond and Cabal Ritual definitely part of the equation. Multiple Cabal Rituals. There's the Infernal. So not much else needed. There's a Dark Ritual. We just need Lotus Petal from here. Dark Ritual will feed those. And there's the Lotus Petal. So that is going to be it. Cabal, yeah, that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Lotus Petal into Dark Ritual, Cabal Ritual, Infernal Tutor. And that is it. You can get past in Flames from there. If the Storm count's not high enough, it actually might have been enough just to grab the Tendrils. But what a surprising turn of events, facing down counterbalance and counterspell. And the more conservative approach by Ben there is going to allow for a turn 2 Ad Nauseam into the win. While the sideboarding's happening, I'd like to thank Gaming Etc. This is a weekly series that they do there. It's the first time I've made it down on a Tuesday night in quite some time. And they've got a whole new group of players there having fun every week with Legacy. This is a mobile setup that's actually shot using my phone. So definitely interested in any ideas in terms of how to improve the stream. I've got a few myself. This is the first time it's actually been tested out. And you see here, sideboarding, I am showing that the Empty the Warrens is coming out. At that point, just to give some insight into my thought process, trying to kind of indicate to my opponent that their creature removal is going to be at an all-time low. And of course, I'm bringing in Hope of Ghirapur. The rate that information spreads online, however, makes these type of plays substantially less powerful than they were like a decade ago. I suppose it's more like 2 decades now if I'm really going to date myself. But this type of information is often seen as a mistake by opponents, and some opponents do have a tendency to want to punish mistakes. Some of my favorite stories in Magic involve exactly that, making a play that is seen as kind of non-standard, and players looking to punish it only to realize that it was actually a trap. Perhaps my favorite of all time was versus a deck running Red Elemental Blast, had Vampiric Tutored prior to set up a win on their turn, and I played a main phase Thirst for Knowledge. My opponent sacrificed their fetch land to Red Elemental Blast the Thirst for Knowledge because I clearly shouldn't have played it in the main phase. I should have played it in response to the Yogg-Will. That was their thinking, and as it turned out, they'd completely forgotten about the interaction of having to shuffle their library, hence losing the top card that they had Vampiric Tutored for. So in their haste to punish what they saw as a very amateur move, they actually overlooked a basic card interaction and shuffled away the certain win from the top of their library. There's countless other stories like that, though. Anytime that you're making a play that people kind of look at as incorrect, there is in a large group of opponents a desire to really punish that, and that could be like playing spells in your first main before you attack. There are a lot of kind of golden rule, not golden rules, but kind of rules of thumb in Magic that are kind of accepted as proper lines of play. Got a couple of prototypes on screen there. The upcoming accessories line. We'll have more on that in the coming weeks. And then shuffling up, perhaps contemplating what could have been done differently there. Really just playing the counterbalance, the only real difference there. Of course, if that counterbalance was on 1, then it would have prevented the win. It would have prevented the Ad Nauseam, and if it was on 0 or 2, it would have actually prevented winning that turn. I would have had to discard down to 7 cards and tried to play through the counterbalance later, so perhaps not valuing counterbalance enough. Even Force of Will on top of the library would have stopped the Ad Nauseam, so not a lot of cards would have been a complete brick. And we've got Gitaxian Probe giving perfect information. However, it is not very good news here. 2 Force of Wills, plenty of blue cards. So this is going to be ice skating uphill again, which is very often the case with Storm versus Miracles. Miracles very often has a strategic advantage early with just the raw number of counter spells. And there is the search. That is going to create some card selection. Not necessarily card advantage yet, but certainly has the ability to increase the card quality as the game goes on, and in general, Storm hoping that the game just doesn't go on too long. A Brainstorm going before Red Elemental Blast gets online. Once they have access to red mana, very often Miracle's bringing in a bunch of red or Pyroblasts, and if those can kind of cut down on the number of resolved cantrips early, it can really hinder Storm's development and just cut down on the raw number of cards that Storm has to play with. Of course, a card like Brainstorm is more powerful the more cards that you have in hand. You want to be able to get rid of your 2 worst cards, but you want a fistful of other quality cards when the spell's done resolving. Alright, so Underground Seas everywhere, not worrying about Blood Moon here. You don't always have the luxury of worrying about it, and there we pick up another Force of Will. 3 forces, that is pretty brutal. Search allowing for another land drop. Triple force is hugely problematic here. Hope of Ghirapur, the type of card that will draw a single force. Cabal Therapy is a card that would have to get Force of Willed as well. Those are the type of cards you really have to hope for here. Cards like Ad Nauseam can really help being fired off during the end step as a must counter, but getting past 3 forces is a lot to ask, and now a counterbalance comes in. This is getting completely out of hand. Really just a runaway game here for Miracles. Ponder setting up the counterbalance lock. At this point, probably want to just leave a 1 on top when you can. That is going to prevent a lot of Storm's ability to kind of navigate around the counterbalance, setting up stuff with cantrips and perhaps generating a lot of mana on the low end of the curve with Dark Ritual. Picked up a Pyroblast as well. So this is just going from bad to worse with every draw step. Of course, tournament management, one of the bigger differences between a truly great player and good players. At a certain point, you have to question whether or not it's best to just scoop it up. Versus Miracles, your game plan in general with Storm here would be to try and make sure that you're leaving enough time in Game 3 that you can win, but make it unlikely that the Miracles player can win. So perhaps just play this out, you know, kind of as long as possible without stalling. But scooping here, not really a wise decision from a tournament perspective, even if it is impossible to win. That clock is your enemy or your friend, depending on your tactics. And we've got a bunch of 0 drops resolving through the counterbalance so far. Very interesting. So we don't know what's on top of the library right now. And Infernal Tutor. And it's a counterbalance on top. All right. So Infernal is countered. We do know what's on top of the library now. There's a Red Blast in hand, but no red mana available yet. And a whole bunch of Force of Wills. So another Lion's Eye Diamond. So the Storm count's getting really high here. Storm is already up to 8. Now, no fetch lands or forces yet on the other side of the table. But a Storm count of 8 already. And Chain of Vapor is targeting the Lion's Eye Diamond. It's a really interesting scenario now. So a Force of Will would put it to Storm 9 and bump Ben down to 19. So Chain of Vapor is targeting Lion's Eye Diamond. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Chain of Vapor allows you to sack a land to target another permanent. So whoever owns the non-land permanent targeted by the last copy of Chain of Vapor can keep that ride going. And in this instance, it is targeting Lion's Eye Diamonds, and that is going to be able to push the storm count up. Sacking a land to bounce the Lion's Eye Diamond, sacking another land, bouncing Lion's Eye Diamond. So Storm is currently 8. A decision left to be made here. Looks like Counterbalance is going to get bounced as well. We'll see if that resolves. That might be worth Force of Willing. Of course, the storm count dangerously high here and 4 mana available on board. So Chain of Vapor done resolving. There's Lion's Eye Diamond. We have Storm 9. Storm 10. And it looks like Force of Will is entering the fray here. So now losing life. Going to Storm 11, Storm 12, Storm 13, down to 18 life. One force left, a Brainstorm, and a Red Elemental Blast. And the Storm is 13. And the last card in hand is the Tendrils. So this is 28 coming in. We've got a Brainstorm. The only card here that would matter is Flusterstorm. So fetching in response, know that Counterbalance was on top. Counterbalance not going to be good enough, so fetching. Wow. So 3 Force of Will and Red Blast. And the only hope here is hitting a Flusterstorm. The storm count is now 50. Oh, and Flusterstorm right off the top. What a savage, savage top deck. All of that for naught. Oh, how brutal is that? Surgical, force. So pair of Force of Wills left in hand. Wow. That is an amazing, amazing sequence there. Hitting that Flusterstorm. Tendrils, such a powerful card naturally against the control style decks. Storm being a nearly uncounterable mechanic, only Flusterstorm or Mindbreak Trap effectively dealing with that. There's just the ability to sack the Lion's Eye Diamond to keep that. 3 copies of Tendrils going through, not really worth it. Gonna have to just hope to draw some more mana and perhaps Past in Flames to make this go again. Wow, what a game that was. It is not quite over. Counterbalance likely to come down here and all but seal the deal. At this point, really need like Cabal Ritual and Past in Flames. But that is only 8 mana available, and there's a Force of Will on the other side there. Past in Flames does have flashback, so it would need to get countered twice. The search has flipped, so now every turn is going to be an impulse. Likely going to be the best use of mana until Entreat the Angels or Jace the Mind Sculptor get involved. Oh, and there's the Surgical Extraction. So this game is actually over. That Tendrils a target for Surgical. Oh, and he's actually going to fire it off right now. So yeah, that Surgical is going to get rid of the only other win condition in the deck. Of course, Empty the Warrens was sideboarded out here, so that does it. What a game that was. Well, while there is the shuffling going on and perhaps some sideboard adjustments, I'd like to thank Gaming Etc. for hosting this tournament. This is part of their Tuesday Night Legacy series, and it was filmed on location with a mobile setup, a little bit different from the Scholar setup that we use every Wednesday night at 7:30. Really interested in getting feedback on this video, the production quality, anything you guys think that could improve it. I've got a couple of ideas right off the bat. This is the first time I'm seeing this footage, and I can already think of a couple of things that we'll be able to do to improve that, and look forward to implementing them. But I'd really love your feedback as well. I would like to be able to provide the highest quality legacy, vintage, really any format where Brainstorm is legal. I would enjoy getting some coverage out there to you guys, and perhaps showing you some decks and some matchups that you either haven't seen, or really being able to kind of nerd out and get really deep into the strategy and the lines of those decks, as well as covering the basics for beginners. So it's a very deep pool that we get to play in these Eternal formats, and it is a lot of fun to be able to see these matches when they're my matches, be able to kind of review my lines when they're matches that I didn't see take place, be able to see them for the first time and give my thoughts in real time. And here we go into Game 3. What a huge swing that was in Game 2 to go from facing down triple Force of Will and Red Blast to a Hail Mary Brainstorm to a Flusterstorm. I mean, that is why we play the game. Very exciting match. And here we've got some mana and the play, which is definitely not inconsequential. Duress resolving here, and we're seeing Jace, Portent, Ponder, and a Flusterstorm. The Flusterstorm hits the bin, and the shields are down currently, so passing the turn, and we're going to see up to 5 cards here if a Ponder is played. You've got the 1 card for the draw step, 3 off of Ponder, and then if none of those are Force of Will, we could see a shuffle, but Miracle's really going to want to get some type of defense in place as quickly as possible, because Storm can just explode out of nowhere. Of course, he has no information about my hand other than whatever tells he can pick up on, and any information he can kind of derive based off of how many cards I kept and the way that I've played so far, but not a lot of information really given by a first turn Duress. It can indicate that there's additional counter magic, additional discard. Of course, the information gained off of Duress does make Cabal Therapy better, and if the Duress is not being followed up by an immediate win, that is often the case, that they do have additional discard coming down the pipe. That Jace the Mind Sculptor could eventually become a problem. Hopefully not going to need to use any discard on that. And a regular old counterspell drawn. So, disruption acquired. Jace, a challenging card to play in this matchup. He does really decrease the card quality of your opponent if you start Fate Sealing. He allows you to dig for more counter spells. He allows you to hide stuff on top of your deck. But that cost of 4 mana in a single turn is really a high cost versus Storm. So it's a real challenge there to figure out when you actually want to be tapping out for Jace versus the loss of each actual turn of using him. So when you don't tap out, every following turn is a turn that you're down a card, or you have lost the ability to Fate Seal them. That incremental advantage that he gives you every turn, you're passing on. However, putting the shields down is such a dangerous thing. And we've got a fetch. Cabal Therapy does end up getting rid of that Jace, so he will not be part of the party, and the rest of the hand is shown, so we know what is necessary to play around from the Storm side of the table. Pyroblast is joined by another blue card. It may have been a counterspell or a predict. And there's the search, and that is going to start to generate card advantage very soon. It looks like we have almost 7 cards in graveyard already. If not, that fetch land should flip the search, and that is going to start to pile on. Such a great new addition to Miracles. Able to just generate card advantage. And more than just card advantage, really card selection as well. There's a huge difference in between a top deck land and another counter spell, or being able to find that threat when you really need it. It speeds up the clock tremendously, really allowing you to dig through the deck, saving you tons of draw steps. So, even though Miracles has lost Sensei's Top, it has picked up some new toys, and it's putting them to great effect. Really performing overall quite well for a deck that, is lost just an amazing amount of power. It'd almost be like Storm losing Tendrils of Agony. Perhaps not the best analogy in terms of, Sensei's Top also set up the game plan, like it allowed you to win, but it also helped the whole time, whereas Tendrils is only useful at the end of the game. So it's hard to think of another example. Maybe Lion's Eye Diamond, in terms of the enabling capacity that it has for Storm. But here we go. Fetch land. Fetch land. This might be a turn where we see something. That search getting flipped really does start to apply some pressure. It's almost as if you have a creature breathing down your neck and you are starting to bleed out on life total. Even though it's not measured in those life points, you know that the game is slipping away every single turn that's turned sideways, and they get the best card off the top few of their deck. So here we go. A Red Blast, a Predict, a Council's Judgment, another Search. Not a ton of cards in hand to play around. Let's see what gets fired off here. Starting with a very deliberate Cabal Ritual. Now, Ritual is not actually going to have Threshold here. This is just a terrible Dark Ritual at this point. If this does resolve, that's going to turn into 3 black mana, and we have to imagine there's going to be some discard coming in here. Chain of Vapor targeting Lion's Eye Diamond. So this may be bait for Red Blast, but with only 1 artifact, the Storm is going to get built either way. Replaying Lion's Eye Diamond. Cabal Ritual, so that also added to the threshold count. So this Cabal Ritual will add 5 black. All right. So I believe there's still a counterspell on the other side there. Storm 6. That would go to 8 black. And Dark Petition. Okay, Storm 7. So just a counterspell in hand. So the 8 black goes down to 3. Looks like just 1 in hand. Of course, when Dark Petition resolves, definitely have Spell Mastery. So that 3 black is going to go back up to 6. So Counterspell in hand. 1 off of lethal. We don't know what that last card is from here. And Storm at 7. And Duress puts it to Storm 8. And let's see what's in hand here. So there's a Counterspell. Oh, is that a Snapcaster Mage? That might be a Snapcaster. It is Predict, Search, Pyroblast. And in the graveyard there's a Flusterstorm and a... I mean, if the Counterspell is taken, then Snapcaster can just get that back. And there's the Tendrils. Might as well fire it off at this point. So Snapcaster, a huge pickup. So good in that it cannot be stopped by Duress. And Cabal Therapy is not even particularly good against it, seeing as how they can play it in response. So that is likely the nail in the coffin here. Firing off a Pyroblast just to build Storm. And then we've got the Snapcaster coming in. And he's going to go ahead and consume that Flusterstorm, making good use of his Enter the Battlefield trigger. So Tendrils is out of there. And at this point, it is now just a search for Past in Flames. Gonna need Past in Flames to come in and to resolve. And a 3-mana Council's Judgment, getting that Lion's Eye Diamond. Now going to need additional mana as well. Probably the best draws here would be like Dark Ritual and a Past in Flames. Oh, and another Snapcaster on the Miracle side. So really just closing it out. Dark Ritual into Infernal. So that is actually a good draw here. 1 black floating. And that gets Snapcaster Counterspell. So the clock is now ticking. 4 damage per turn. Just 3 more turns. Oh, and a Monastery Mentor. So this is 1 to 2 turns left. Gonna just need like perfect runner draws to have any chance at this. There's a Portent. That's going to bump this up to 7 damage this turn. 2 more spells will be lethal. Sitting on Flusterstorm. So Dead Man walking here for Storm. The Portent trigger. Got Lion's Eye Diamond. Getting a blue Gitaxian Probe, paying a blue at 2 life, can't even pay the life. Cracking Lion's Eye Diamond in response, giving the maximum number of outs here. And Flusterstorm being revealed. So that is going to do it. Just a Dark Ritual off the top. And that is the match. Well played, Ben. That is a very difficult matchup on both sides of the board. And congratulations there for taking down the tournament. So that is the end of this series. We will have some more from Scholars soon. This has been ELD with Brainstorm MTG. Thanks for watching.